Real quick before we get into the review, just gotta thank the people over on Patreon, because without their support, a lot of this upgraded content you see on the channel would not be possible. And I gotta say, on top of being able to respond to you guys in the DMs, you know, one of the fun things about the Patreon is every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul, and there's a lot of good goodies in that one. You also get sneak peeks at videos that haven't made their way onto the channel yet. I'm still figuring out what to do for actual YouTube memberships, so leave a suggestion down in the comment section below. But with that being said, thank you so much for all of you guys' support, and now let's get into the review. Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto episode 192. And now that episode 192 is done in the books, we got a lot of Easter eggs to actually go down and talk over. And I gotta say, man, hands down, one of the things I appreciated most in this episode is the fact that the anime very early on is starting to actually show you something I've been hammering home for a while, which is the fact that the story of Kawaki and the story of Naruto and Jigen is all intertwined. And I like how what they're setting up here is they're showing you how Kawaki, when it comes to the actual father he had, and then his adopted father and Jigen, and then just Naruto in general, you're seeing how there are different sides to actually being a father. You're seeing all 3 angles on there. You have the abusive father, the manipulative father when it comes to Jigen, and then in Naruto you have what is actual true love that a parent has for a child. And I like how you see all 3 aspects of that represented in this episode, because one thing that they did here is they had Naruto say the exact same phrase that Jigen did to Kawaki, where he says like, yo, this is a safe place, you have nothing to worry about here. Well, Kawaki immediately does not trust Naruto once he actually hears that, because those were some of the first words that Jigen spoke to him. And so I thought that was very interesting right there. I thought that was interesting that they had Naruto use those words. If you read the manga, you know why that parallel is so damn important. But I gotta say, that part aside, there's also a really big Easter egg for how the car organization actually operates. So one thing we found out in this episode is the fact that Delta was actually one of the people who helped Jigen find Kawaki. And the reason why that's so big is in the manga, it was directly stated that Delta and Kawaki had a bit of a relationship. Delta's past was tied to Kawaki's past to a certain extent, and we didn't know necessarily what that entailed, other than the fact that Delta at some point likely beat on Kawaki. And so I like how what you see here is that this could be what she was actually alluding to as well. And I like the fact that when you see all those people in those medical tents and everything, and you see how they're collecting blood samples to find basically people compatible, or at least meeting the bare minimum of the compatibility standards that Amato is looking for in order to help Jigen find people who can actually use the karma seal. So I thought that was interesting. And what I like there is when you see those people in those medical outfits and everything, it goes back to how Kara is actually structured, which I highly recommend checking out the Kara Organization Explained video, because basically you have your inners and you have your outers, but outers aren't necessarily always going to be these ex-shinobi like Al, but instead they're going to be people that are doing your everyday things, or people in high up positions of power, or in this case people who are doing the medical work. It's actually very complicated, but I like that you saw that little bit of information right there. And I like how Kawaki, his immediate response is, I don't trust these guys. I like how at every turn you're seeing why Kawaki does not trust people, because the old man that he thought was being the nice guy and showing him goldfish, my first thought when I saw Kawaki looking at the piece of paper and seeing the goldfish, I thought, was this dude using some type of genjutsu on him? That wasn't necessarily the case, but I gotta say those are some very beautifully animated shots. If I'm not mistaken, Studio Pierrot actually did the animation for this. They didn't outsource it, and you can tell this is actually a very beautifully animated episode. But what I will say though is I like how you get this moment where Kawaki, you're seeing over and over how every step of the way his trust in humanity is just going further and further down the drain. His own father is betraying him. Kawaki's being beaten by boys in the village. the man that saves him is actually trying to traffic him. I like that you see all this stuff, and it goes back to what I've said before. Naruto's run as Hokage is actually very complicated because yes, we're in a time of peace, but you could argue that there's more underhanded stuff that's going on in the Land of Fire right now than Naruto even realizes it. And even though you have these various instances where the ninja villages are working in tandem to one another, there's actually been more lawlessness that has happened outside of the borders of the Land of Fire. And it just kind of goes to show you that, like, even though there's peace on paper, the world is still in utter chaos, which is how people like the Kara were able to actually start rising up through the ranks. I thought that was a good thing that the anime episode did a good job of establishing there. And one thing I will say is that this episode also kind of shows you the importance of some information we found out after the Fourth Shinobi World War ended. So in the Sakura Hiden novel, you actually get the revelation that Sakura was building these medical clinics. In particular, they focus on mental health, and it wasn't just for children, it was also for adults who, after the Fourth Great Ninja War, battled a lot of insanity. And you saw this play out over the course of quite a few novels after the war, where there's interconnective tissue, where a common theme that you're seeing is that a lot of people were mentally screwed up after Mamoru Uchiha unleashed the infinite Tsukiyomi on everybody, and everyone got the opportunity to actually experience their own dream world. The reason why that's so important is after the infinite Tsukiyomi ended and all these people were ripped out of a world that was better than the one that they actually lived in, what ended up happening is some people ended up siding with Madara's ideology because they got to experience what they thought was true peace, even though it was an illusion. They got to experience it. Reality was too rough for them to actually deal with, and so a lot of people mentally broke at that point. And what you see with Kawaki's father is the fact that Kawaki is stated that his father actually lost his mind during the Fourth Great Ninja War. Now, in this instance right here, we can clearly see that he knows what he's doing, so he isn't completely mentally incapable. That's not it. But we see the man drinking, we see him struggling with some of his own demons, and it's stated that it all goes back to the Fourth Great Ninja War. So I thought that that was kind of cool right there. Again, that was nice interconnective tissue right there. That's something I actually enjoy, and what I like here is how you see how the ramifications of war are actually being trickled down to a child who wasn't even born when that war was going on, but instead he's the offspring of somebody who suffered during that war. So I thought that that was really nice to see that right there, because it kind of goes back to something, you know, you never really know how your actions, or in this case your inactions, are gonna impact the people that rely on you. So I thought that that was a really cool moment right there. I also like how, you know, we get the full answer of what happened with Kawaki, because in the manga it was heavily implied the kid had a tragic backstory. We didn't know necessarily what was going on with his father. We just saw him kind of curled up in a fetal position. It was implied that his father was just regularly beating the hell out of him. In this episode, we actually see what goes on. And I gotta say, for me, one of the harder scenes to actually see is how Kawaki, after he gets attacked by those boys, he's telling them before that, like, hey, my father was a hero. You see him standing up for his old man, and then his old man not only throws him in a cellar because he didn't bring him any liquor. This is after he grabs him by the throat and holds him in the air. But then you also get this moment to where his father takes a bottle and just brings it down over Kawaki's head. And that was so brutal. That was so brutal. That was so hard to watch. Don't get me wrong. We've seen way more messed up stuff in anime. I mean, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, what happened with the doctor with his daughter and the dog. I mean, nobody's saying that this compares that. Absolutely. But, you know, by Boruto standards, this was something really hard to watch. So I gotta say, this was really good. You know, this episode had a secondary objective, which is This episode wanted to show you how dangerous Jigen is, and it also wanted to start building more heat for Jigen, because Jigen, you're supposed to want to hate him. And in the manga, Jigen was just this overarching presence that we only knew mainly because of Kawaki's flashbacks and a few things here or there where we see some dialogue conversations with him and Delta. We didn't get a whole lot with Jigen, but what the anime's done since the Kara actuation arc onward with this new director is this new director has built up Jigen in a way that Ikimoto absolutely failed to do in the actual manga, as well as Kodachi. Kodachi wrote the actual story for this, and so I like how this is a really great opportunity to actually make fans get seriously invested in Jigen. I thought that was nice, and I like how, you know, Kawaki, when he shows up at that site where Amado is doing all this experiments on all these children, Kawaki knows right away that I don't need to be here. This is not a safe place, but he can't actually do anything about it because he's allowed himself to be taken from his actual birthplace. But that child instinct of knowing whether or not you're in a safe place, whether or not you're going to be taken care of, I like the fact that Kawaki immediately, from the moment that Jigen is introduced to him in the episode, when he says, "Father, who is this man? Father, I want to stay here," he knew that his life was going to change if he went with this man. And so I like that moment right there, and it really pays off, because when you see Amado and he's got all those children in all those tanks and Kawaki is just getting completely worked up over it. The thing about those tanks that you have to understand if you're an anime only fan, and I don't really consider this to be a spoiler, so this is more so me giving you context for this, but the thing you have to understand is that the experiments that are going on right there are similar to what Orochimaru did with the curse seal, where a lot of children die before they're able to be compatible with the curse seal. And so there was a very high kill rate with Orochimaru's curse seals. Well, what Jigen and Amado are doing, the kill rate, to exaggerate but to not necessarily exaggerate, is probably closer to 99.8%. And I don't want to go any further because if I do so, that will be a major spoiler for the anime. But the fact is that Kawaki is not in a safe place. So I thought that that was very interesting right there. And I gotta say, I like how, you know, Jigen kills the dude off screen that was trying to get Kawaki to go with them, and he says like, "Hey, you know, the stench of a trafficker's all over you. I know you're trying to take the kid. I was trying to trick the dumb brat myself." And you know, for a moment, I'm not gonna lie, man, like when he said, "Let's go to the various villages selling the goldfish," you know, my radar went up and said, "Yo, this dude feels like he's grooming Kawaki." But I said, you know, hey, you know, maybe this is the one person in the village that actually took notice in him, and so I let my guard down for a second. So I thought that that was kind of cool to actually see how it's like, yo, okay. So in reality, there were actually two grown men who were grooming Kawaki because they wanted to touch him, and somewhere in the shadows, Orochimaru was probably taking out a pen and paper saying, "So this is how you touch little boys in a way that doesn't get you a lawsuit." Basically, Kawaki, his whole story, from the beginning of this origin story up until the moment where he actually wakes up in the hospital with Naruto and Shikamaru and Konohamaru looking over him, Kawaki's been fighting his whole life. And the thing about that, if you've ever gone through real adversity like that, you know, the thing is I can relate to what Kawaki's going through in the sense that I know what it's like to fight every single day and to deal with that mental aspect of it. And I think that that's one of the things, and it might be projection on my side, but it's one of those things to where I understand what's gonna happen with Kawaki, and what you're actually seeing in the manga to a certain extent is Kawaki's getting tired of fighting. And when you get tired to that point, you either blow up or you completely cave in. That's why they did that episode last week with doing personification on the actual dog, where the dog was taking on Kawaki's personality. Just as that dog was struggling for every scrap that it had and never really gave up and was apprehensive to trust people, but then once it did trust people, it got hurt. Kawaki is looking like he's walking down that exact same road. So I thought that, you know, these last couple episodes, when you look at them together like this with some of the manga content, while I wasn't a big fan of last week's episode, I will say the payoff is there with this episode now. So my episode question to you guys is, if you were a manga reader, how does this extra information about Kawaki actually make you view his character now? And if you're an anime only fan, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well have they done setting up the Kawaki and Jigen narratives for their character arcs? Let me know down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.